Why do mindfulness meditation? Do you know how we all have a stress response? If you have a human nervous system, you have a stress response, which is fight, flight, or freeze. So somebody says something or something happens and it causes you to feel fear or anger or something, and the basic reaction, the limbic brain, the kind of lizard brain reaction is to either hit the person, fight them, run away from them as fast as you can, or sometimes we freeze. So we're all familiar with that. It causes anxiety, it causes stress, because like the nervous system is designed to help us survive. You know, and it's very adapted to life on, say, the savannas, on the plains where we're being attacked by saber-toothed tigers and stuff. But it's probably not so adapted to modern day life where, you know, you're stuck in traffic and somebody says something or does something, and maybe you have a reaction which is out of proportion or whatever, you know, because that's how the nervous system is. So we're all familiar with that. We all agree we have a stress response. Wouldn't it be grand if there was the opposite to that, where your nervous system had a relaxation response? It turns out it does. So there was a guy called Herbert Benson, and Herbert Benson was, I believe, a medical doctor, but he was a scientific researcher as well. And he had a laboratory at Harvard Medical School, you know, so it's like one of the good, I suppose, traditionally universities in the States. And so he did research into this, what he called the relaxation response. And yes, he found that just as the human nervous system has a fight or flight freeze, a stress response, where the body releases chemicals that wire us, noradrenaline and cortisol, it also has the opposite, a relaxation response. And then he said, well, how do we bring about the relaxation response? So he found that to bring about the relaxation response, that innate ability for the body to relax, to go into parasympathetic nervous system mode, which is rest and digest mode, he said what you do is you bring the mind to focus on something, an object, and when you find the mind has wandered off that object, you bring it back. So it could be like bouncing a ball, kicking a ball against the wall. It's just some repetitive task. There's a rhythm to it. So you put your mind concentrating on it, knowing it, being aware of it. At some point you find you're up in your head and you're talking to yourself and you're telling yourself all sorts of stuff about the future, about the past, or just whatever, you know. I call it a mental banging of pots and pans. Bang, 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 bang. When you notice that that's happened, you bring the mind back. And then the mind wanders and you bring it back. That's how you bring about the relaxation response. What do we do in mindfulness meditation for those of you who've done it before? You bring your mind to give attention to, say, the breath, and when you find your mind has wandered, you bring it back. Hopefully you were taught that. I think a lot of mindfulness stuff now is more like guided relaxation or whatever, which is grand, but it's not traditionally mindfulness practice. So that's what we do in mindfulness meditation. We are bringing about the body's innate relaxation response. A lot of people will say, I can't meditate. I just couldn't. I close my eyes and I just have all of these thoughts. It's like an avalanche of thoughts, just whoo, 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 whoo. And my mind was restless and I couldn't, and I can't meditate. Of course you can meditate. If you have a human nervous system, you have a relaxation response. So all you have to do is stick with it. The mind wanders, you bring it back. The mind wanders, you bring it back. 100,000 times over, the mind wanders and you bring it back. It's that people aren't willing to keep with it. So they don't get the relaxation response kicking in. But if you have a nervous system, you have a relaxation response, you can initiate it. It's kind of like people say, I can't swim. The instructor put me into the water and I took in mouthfuls of water. It was cold. I had all of this terrible fear of drowning. I can't swim. Of course you can swim. If you stick with it, if you do the lessons, right? And initially it's uncomfortable. Initially you swallow water. Initially maybe it's really unpleasant. But if you stick with it, if you follow the instructions, before you know it, after several weeks, you're going up and down the pool and over and back or whatever. Same with meditation. So it's not a meditation course, but I just wanted to say that in general because it's a great tool to have for yourself, to be able to just bring about your relaxations. So we will focus on the breath, but as Herbert Benson found, it could be anything. It could be just bouncing a ball with a tennis racket, kicking a ball against a wall, being aware of the physical body as it moves. It's just anything. You put your mind attending to it, being aware of it. The mind wanders, you bring it back. Mind wanders, you bring it back. Becoming aware of the breath, you can start to influence it. Usually by becoming aware of the breath, you may notice that you're breathing shallow breaths, or you're breathing fast breath, or you're holding tension. And then that can also be let go. By being aware of the breath, you influence it, but also it starts to influence your nervous system, influence your inner state. So that's kind of quite good. Now, someone say the breath's a bit difficult to stay aware of, and that's true. So then there's other things like mantras. There's mudras, there's physical movement, other alternatives. But we're going to go with the breath. We will do a mindfulness of the breath practice. I'll guide us in that. You just have to sit comfortably, probably upright, because if you're slumped, you're tuning yourself into more drowsiness and sleepiness, whereas if you're sitting upright, you're more likely to be alert and relaxed, which is what we want. For some of us, we might close our eyes and just as uncomfortable images, in which case, skip the practice altogether, or just have your eyes half open, half closed. The other thing I would say, or with mindfulness, I remember doing a workshop somewhere, and it was clear to me there was a woman in the front, and she just looked miserable, like awful. And so I went to her at a break, and I said, like, how's everything? And she said, my son died a week ago. And her daughter, meaning the best for her, brought her along to the mindfulness class because they heard mindfulness helps you relax. That was the worst place she could be, right? Because sometimes there's just so much going on for us. Now, if you're a skilled practitioner, maybe, right? But for most of us starting off, you don't want that going on, right? You just want to have a normal, run-of-the-mill, ups and downs. It's not a big deal, right? All right, so that's the just, you know, the health warning, I suppose. If there's mental health issues going on, that's not the time to take up mindfulness practice. Unfortunately, it's what a lot of people do, but no, it's not the time. You do it when it's just, you need to relax, you need to sleep a bit better, whatever. So if that's the case, you do something like yoga, you do something like counseling, whatever. Just sit this one out. Nobody will know.